Black CEO humiliated by store manager. Days later, she pulled 5 BOR and erased the whole brand. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. Get out of my store. Get out of my store. The words cracked through the air like a gunshot. Every head in the boutique turned. The light, bright, sterile, perfect for selling $6,000 dresses suddenly felt like a spotlight on humiliation. Behind the glass counter, Vanessa Holt, the store manager, stood rigid in her crimson dress, arm extended, palm out like a commandment. In front of her, calm but unflinching, was Jasmine Carter, a tall black woman in a burnt orange wrap dress, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. A few shoppers froze mid-scroll on their phones. A man in a navy suit glanced between them, uncertain if he should intervene or disappear. Silence spread sharp as shattered crystal. "Did you not hear me?" Vanessa's voice rose again, brittle with authority. "We don't entertain walk-ins without appointments, especially not unverified buyers." Her words dropped heavy, deliberate. Everyone knew what unverified meant. Jasmine didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her stillness said enough, her eyes steady and precise. Scan the room, the gold racks, the mirrored walls, the cluster of assistants pretending to reorganize handbags so they wouldn't have to choose a side. She'd seen this scene before. Different store. Same script, the assistant manager, Ryan, shifted awkwardly, adjusting his tie. "Ma'am," he murmured. "Maybe we can just—" Vanessa cut him off. "No, Ryan, we can't just— This store has standards. God Press is live day." God Press? Her tone softened into something worse. A performance of politeness. "Miss Carter, was it? These items start at 5 figures. I doubt this is the right space for you." A camera phone clicked. Someone in the corner whispered. Is she serious? Jasmine exhaled slowly, not from anger control. Her voice when it came was calm, lower than the room expected. "I asked to see your creative director," she said. "Not your assumptions." Vanessa laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Sweetheart, the creative director doesn't do meet and greets. You'll find better luck at our outlet branch across town." She turned to Ryan. "Escort her out before this becomes a scene." But the scene had already begun. A young employee near the perfume stand, Elena, froze mid-spray, eyes wide, her phone trembling in her hand. She'd seen Jasmine's name once months ago in an internal memo labeled Prospective Investment Partner. She didn't dare speak yet. Not while her boss was still performing power. Jasmine's gaze drifted briefly toward the wall of designer logos, one of which, ironically, her firm had funded 3 fiscal years ago. Her voice stayed quiet. "You might want to check who owns your payroll before you raise your voice again." Vanessa scoffed. "Threats now over what? A handbag?" Laughter, nervous, uneven, rippled from the staff, but none of them missed the slight tremor in her hand. The tension thickened, humming like electricity before a storm. A client near the door whispered, "Isn't that Jasmine Carter from the news?" Another shrugged. "Who?" Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Jasmine. 2. Vanessa snapped her fingers toward Ryan again. "Security now." The words echoed through the boutique, but this time no one moved. Because even before the truth came out, Everyone in that gleaming room felt it. The power in Jasmine's silence. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that rewrites the story. The air inside the boutique had changed. It wasn't luxury anymore. It was static, charged with something no one could name, but everyone could feel. The hum of the soft jazz playlist faded beneath the pulse of unease. Vanessa Holt straightened her red dress, trying to recover the rhythm of authority. Her voice came out brittle. "Ryan," I said, "escort her out." But Ryan didn't move. He looked from Jasmine to Vanessa, caught between fear and conscience. The small crowd of shoppers had gathered now, 4, maybe 5 of them, pretending to browse while their phones hovered, cameras half raised. Jasmine stood still at the center of it all, framed by marble floors and racks of gold-trimmed handbags. No bodyguards, no entourage, just her and the storm she refused to dodge. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation. She'd learned long ago that the loudest voice in the room usually belonged to the most frightened person in it. Vanessa mistook that silence for weakness. "You heard me," she said louder, her tone cracking. "Leave before I call mall security. You're disturbing paying clients." "Am I?" Jasmine asked softly. "Or are they disturbed by what you just said?" A flicker of something moved through the crowd's sympathy, discomfort, shame. Elena, the young clerk by the perfume display, lowered her phone, but didn't stop recording. Her lips parted, but fear kept her quiet. Vanessa stepped closer. Too close. Her perfume sharp, expensive, defensive, filled the air. "I've run this store for 6 years, she hissed. "I know the kind of people who try to fake their way into exclusivity. And you, Miss Carter, fit that pattern perfectly." Jasmine's eyes didn't waver. "And what pattern is that?" Vanessa blinked, realizing too late the trap in the question. "You know what I mean?" "Say it," Jasmine replied, her voice steady as glass. The room went utterly silent. Ryan cleared his throat. "Vanessa, maybe let's not enough," she snapped. "This conversation is over." But it wasn't. A quiet voice from the back. Elena's cut through the tension like a blade. "Her name's on the VIP list." Heads turned. The words hung in the air. Small but seismic. "What?" Vanessa spun around. "I said," Elena swallowed. "Her name's listed in the investor program. I saw it last quarter." A few phones caught the moment. Vanessa's face flushed the color of her dress. "That's impossible. Our investors are vetted people of means, reputation, class." Jasmine tilted her head slightly. "And I'm none of those," Vanessa stuttered. "That's not what I meant." "Sure it is," Jasmine said quietly. "You just didn't expect to get caught saying it out loud." Ryan took a slow step back. "Vanessa, maybe we should call upstairs corporate relations." "Do not call anyone," Vanessa snapped, panic bleeding through the last thread of control. But Jasmine was already pulling out her phone's sleek, black, silent power in her hand. She tapped once. "Camille," she said into the receiver, her tone even. "Initiate protocol level 3, this location." A faint voice answered on speaker. "Confirmed, Miss Carter. We're live in 60 seconds." The room froze. Vanessa blinked. "What? What did you just do?" Jasmine didn't answer. She looked past her to the mirrored wall where her own reflection stood, framed between handbags worth less than her pen. Across the boutique, the overhead lights dimmed slightly, just enough for the change to register. Ryan frowned. The system's glitching again. Jasmine smiled faintly. Not a glitch. So then came the subtle chime, one that only insiders recognized, the corporate recall alert. Elena's eyes widened. She'd seen it once during a compliance audit. It meant the owner or someone higher had intervened. Vanessa turned pale. "Who are you?" Jasmine looked at her, calm, almost kind. The woman your brand just tried to humiliate. A pause. And the one who's about to decide if your name stays on payroll. Vanessa's hand trembled now. The crowd was no longer pretending to shop. Phones were up. Whispers everywhere. The story had already begun to escape the walls. And Jasmine, standing still at the center, didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her silence was already louder than every apology that would follow. The next 60 seconds felt longer than the whole day. The boutique was frozen in a tableau luxury, and panic trapped in the same breath. Somewhere in the corner, the soft hum of the air conditioning became the only sound brave enough to exist. Vanessa Holt's posture changed. Gone was the arrogance of a manager in control. What stood there now was someone suddenly realizing she'd stepped on a live wire. Protocol, she repeated, the word catching in her throat. What does that even mean? Jasmine didn't answer. She just slipped her phone into her clutch and folded her arms again, her calm returning like an ocean reclaiming the tide. Elena's phone buzzed quietly. A corporate alert, time-stamped, encrypted. Her eyes widened. It read, Priority Review, Store hash on for 2. Compliance and conduct evaluation triggered by executive oversight. She looked up slowly. That code only appeared when someone at the ownership level had intervened. Ryan leaned toward Vanessa. You might want to step back. Don't tell me what to do, she hissed, but her voice shook now, stripped of certainty. She turned to Jasmine again. Who are you calling? You think some PR stunt's going to scare me? Jasmine's response was soft, deliberate. No, I don't do stunts. I do ownership. The words hit like a glass breaking in slow motion. Ryan's jaw tightened. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. From the back of the store, a shopper whispered, Oh my God, but Vanessa kept pushing she had to. Her pride needed an audience. You're bluffing, she said, stepping forward again. People like you come in here all the time. You talk big, act entitled, and think we'll just hand you credibility and distortion and all the dame. People like me, Jasmine repeated, quiet but sharp. Say that again. Slower this time. Vanessa froze, realizing she'd cornered herself. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had no line ready. Jasmine turned slightly toward the crowd, now gathering near the jewelry section. Her tone never rose, but her words carried. You see, the danger isn't the insult itself. It's how casual it becomes, how easily it hides behind policy. She glanced back at Vanessa. You didn't just insult me. You exposed your system. The words echoed, and then, as if scripted by the universe, a notification sound pinged from the store's main display tablet. On the screen, under the boutique's name, appeared a single update: Account Ownership Audit in Progress. Authorized by Jasmine Carter, CEO Carter and West Holdings. Elena gasped audibly. Ryan stepped back 2 full paces. Vanessa's face drained of color. That's not possible, she whispered. Oh, it's very possible, Jasmine replied softly. Your brand's been under my umbrella for 3 fiscal years. You sell luxury, but I sell the company that sells it. The line hit like thunder. Phones clicked. Recording, someone murmured. She owns it. She actually owns it. The hum of power shifted. Jasmine stepped forward now, not with rage, but precision. She stopped inches from Vanessa, voice barely above a whisper, yet heavy as gravity. You told me to get out of your store, but this isn't your store. It never was. Vanessa stumbled back, her hand brushing against a display stand, sending a row of handbags clattering to the floor. No one moved to help her. Even the security guard at the entrance stood still, eyes wide, waiting for orders that no longer existed. Elena finally found her courage. Miss Carter, she said, her voice trembling with awe. Corporate just logged in remotely. They're watching this live. Jasmine nodded once. Good, let them. Then she turned to Vanessa, her tone shifting from calm to surgical. You have 1 minute to choose. You can apologize to every person in this room, or you can keep pretending this never happened. Either way, your name won't be on next month's payroll. Vanessa's lips parted in disbelief. You wouldn't. Jasmine's gaze didn't flinch. You've already done it to yourself. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was justice breathing. Elena whispered to Ryan, I've never seen anyone so calm. Ryan nodded slowly. That's not calm, he said. That's power remembering itself. The boutique wasn't a store anymore. It was a courtroom. And Jasmine Carter, once mistaken for a trespasser, now stood as both witness and judge. For a long moment, nobody breathed. The boutique, once a temple of wealth, felt like it had stopped existing between seconds. Then the first sound broke the silence, the faint thud of Vanessa's heels as she stumbled backward, searching for control that had already abandoned her. Everyone stopped filming. She barked, voice quivering, hand raised toward the phones around her, but the crowd didn't obey. When power shifts, commands lose gravity. Ryan's voice was the next to emerge. Low, careful, almost apologetic. Miss Holt, he said, you should step aside. Her eyes snapped toward him, desperate. Don't you dare talk to me like... But the sentence never finished. The main display screen behind the counter flickered again, brighter this time, revealing a live corporate dashboard. A new line appeared at the top. Executive oversight engaged. Session active. Then under it, a camera feed. A woman's face appeared on the screen mid-4 seconds. Confident, wearing a headset. Good afternoon, she said through the speakers, her tone cool, efficient. This is Camille Rains, Chief Operations Officer, Carter in West Holdings. We are now monitoring a verified conduct escalation at Store 142. Her gaze seemed to pierce through the room itself. She continued. All staff are to remain in position. No one leaves until this review is complete. It not was example that it sounded a dawning. A ripple went through the employees. Someone whispered, Oh my God, it's real. Vanessa's voice cracked. Camille, this is a misunderstanding. This woman came in. Camille's tone didn't change. That woman is Miss Jasmine Carter, your employer's employer, and as of this moment, she's watching you attempt to rewrite the truth in real time. Gasps, murmurs. Even the shoppers exchanged glances of disbelief. Vanessa's chest rose and fell rapidly, her body language unraveling. No, she never said she was. Jasmine finally spoke, her voice steady. I never needed to. The words dropped like weight. Elena's eyes glistened, not from pity, but from recognition, because this was what justice looked like when it didn't shout, when it simply arrived. Undeniable. Camille's voice returned through the speakers, formal now. Miss Holt, your behavior today constitutes a direct breach of our corporate inclusivity and client dignity policies. We have recordings, witness statements, and your own words on file. You will surrender your access credentials immediately. Vanessa stared at the screen, lips trembling. You can't? Camille cut her off. Already done. The electronic buzz echoed across the room. Vanessa's access badge clipped to her belt flashed red, then went dark. Ryan looked down at his tablet. She's locked out of the system, he whispered. The moment hung heavy. Jasmine didn't gloat. She just watched. Quiet, deliberate, because the truth didn't need applause. It needed memory. Miss Carter? Camille asked through the speaker. How would you like to proceed? Jasmine took a slow breath. Her gaze moved across the room. The employees, the onlookers, the phones still raised. Then she said, We proceed with transparency. Keep the footage. Let the world see what exclusion looks like in a $5 billion brand. and let them watch what accountability feels like. The room stirred. Ryan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a lifetime. Elena stepped closer to Jasmine. "Ma'am." "Thank you," she said softly. Jasmine turned to her, calm, kind. "Don't thank me. Just remember, you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand." Vanessa, trembling now, whispered, "You ruined me." Jasmine met her eyes. "No," she said quietly. "You trained yourself for this moment. I just let the truth play back." In the background, Camille's voice returned. "For the record, Miss Holt's termination is effective immediately. Her access to all brand systems is revoked. HR will contact security to escort her off-site." Phones were still recording. A few shoppers began clapping, not for drama, but for closure. Jasmine turned to leave, but paused at the door. Her final words weren't loud. They were steady, sharp, cinematic. "You built this store on exclusion. I built the company on endurance. Let's see which one survives." And with that, she walked out each step, quiet, certain, unhurried. While behind her, Vanessa Holt, once the queen of the boutique, stood surrounded by everything she tried to weaponize. Luxury, silence, and a mirror she could no longer avoid. By the time Jasmine's heels touched the marble just beyond the boutique's door, the story was no longer hers alone. It was public property. Phones had already uploaded, hashtags were forming, and the name Carter and West Holdings had begun trending across 3 continents. Inside the boutique, chaos wore the mask of control. Vanessa Holt stood motionless, her badge still blinking red, every breath shallow. Ryan tried to speak, but found no words. Elena quietly closed the register, her eyes flicking towards the glass where Jasmine's reflection had vanished. And yet somehow, her presence filled the entire room. Outside, Jasmine paused beneath the store's glowing sign, a minimalist white logo now casting a pale reflection on the glossy floor. She glanced at it once, not with pride, not with anger, but with something heavier. Memory. She had built this empire to dismantle moments like the one that just happened. But still, they found her. Different faces, same pattern. A sleek black car rolled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, opening the door. Inside, a woman in a navy suit waited Camille Rains, the COO, whose voice had cut through the boutique minutes earlier. "Ma'am," Camille said as Jasmine entered, "the clip's already viral. 47,000 views in the last 5 minutes. It's spreading with the tag number "Get out of my store." Jasmine leaned back in the seat, exhaling slowly. "Let it spread." Camille hesitated. "It could affect market perception." "It should," Jasmine replied. "Markets react. Movements transform." The car glided through the city past glass towers built on polished branding and buried bias. Jasmine looked out the window at the skyline, its reflection fractured by light and rain. For a moment, her mind drifted back into 20 years earlier when she was 19, standing in a department store holding a pair of heels she couldn't afford yet. The clerk had looked at her and said, "Try them on if you want, but be careful. Security's watching." She remembered putting the shoes back. She remembered how small she felt, and how quietly she promised herself never again. Now the same kind of woman who once looked through her had just lost her career for it. And yet there was no satisfaction in it, only a strange, solemn peace, because power didn't heal history. It just leveled the ground long enough for dignity to stand. Camille's tablet chimed again. Update from finance. She said, "They're confirming your directive to withdraw all Carter and West investments from Armand Group's retail division." Jasmine nodded. "Every cent, pull the $5 billion immediately." "Understood. That'll collapse their liquidity by Monday. Then they'll understand what exclusion costs." Camille turned her gaze toward the city passing by. "You know," she said softly. "This will erase the entire brand." "I know people will lose jobs. People already did," Jasmine said. "They just called it policy." The car slowed at a red light. On a billboard above, an advertisement for the same luxury brand flashed bright, smiling models. Perfect lighting. False inclusivity. Jasmine looked up at it, unreadable. Then she whispered, "Erase it." Camille nodded. "It'll be gone within 48 hours. For a few seconds, the world was silent again. Just the hum of the engine, the faint rhythm of city rain, and the quiet dignity of a woman who didn't need revenge, only resolution. Back in the boutique, Elena sent a text to an unknown number. She didn't yell once. She didn't have to. It went viral before she could even lock her phone. As Jasmine's car merged into the flow of evening traffic, Camille asked softly, "What happens now?" It once had galleries where Bemis. Jasmine looked out at the horizon, her voice calm, almost poetic. "Now we rebuild, but this time not for luxury, for legacy." And as the skyline faded behind tinted glass, the reflection of a once humiliated woman dissolved, leaving in her place the image of a CEO who had quietly rewritten the rules of power. By dawn, the city had already turned on the screens. Cafes, offices, even airport lounges everywhere. A monitor glowed. The same headline crawled across the ticker. Black CEO eruption. $5B withdrawal triggers global brand meltdown. Stock charts bled red. Talk shows spun theories. Influencers dissected the now viral clip of Vanessa Holt shouting, "Get out of my store," frame by frame. But no one could out-talk the truth that hung inside that footage. Dignity had finally gone corporate. At 6:45 a.m., inside our Monday group headquarters, the boardroom felt less like a sanctuary and more like a wake. Screens showed the live financial dashboard. Thousands of accounts freezing in sequence, red alerts cascading like a storm front. The CFO's voice trembled. That $5 billion wasn't just liquidity, it was leverage. "Without it, we don't say it," snapped the chairman, sweat darkening the collar of his silk shirt. "Find her. Fix it." Their C was in for. But no one dared finish the thought that followed, because everyone knew who her was. Jasmine Carter across the city. She sat in her office glass walls, morning light slicing through the skyline like judgment itself. The view was quiet, serene, almost misleading. Her phone buzzed. Camille's voice came through the intercom, crisp but cautious. "Media requests are stacking. CNN, Bloomberg, Essence, all want statements." Jasmine didn't look up from her screen. "Silence is the statement." Camille hesitated. Understood. On the wall, a muted TV replayed the viral clip again. Vanessa's face frozen mid-yell. Jasmine's calm silhouette reflected in the boutique mirror. Every pause, every look, every breath now dissected like gospel. Underneath the caption read, "Grace under fire, the power of stillness." Jasmine closed her laptop, stood, and walked to the window. Below, the city buzzed with the hum of commerce delivery trucks, honking horns, ambition in motion, all powered, she thought, by invisible lines of trust. And when that trust breaks, everything breaks. Her assistant, Naya, stepped into the room. "Miss Carter, they're asking if you'll attend the shareholder meeting at Armand headquarters." Jasmine's lips curved slightly. "They didn't invite me before." "Why start now?" Nia smiled nervously. "Because they're scared." It not Lee Livell was, and called Test Good, Jasmine said, eyes still on the skyline, let fear do what pride wouldn't by 9 a.m. The first Armand stores across Paris, London, and Milan had shuttered. By noon, social media turned the collapse into theater. Clips flooded timelines, staff crying outside boutiques, customers demanding refunds, commentators calling it the most poetic corporate reckoning in luxury history. At 1:30 p.m., Camille entered Jasmine's office again, holding a tablet. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "the chairman himself just sent a message. He's requesting a private meeting." Jasmine turned. "Where?" He says, "Anywhere you choose." Her gaze didn't waver. "Then make it poetic. Tell him to meet me at store 142, the scene of the crime." Camille blinked. "You're serious completely." She paused, then added, "Have Elena there. The clerk? The young one?" "Yes, she spoke truth when it wasn't safe. I want her to see what courage earns." Hours later, the same boutique that had once echoed with arrogance was being scrubbed spotless. Press barricades lined the sidewalk. Inside, staff whispered as executives in tailored suits rearranged displays like soldiers cleaning a battlefield. And then, at exactly 6 p.m., the door opened. Jasmine entered. No entourage, no announcement, just presence. Behind her, Camille and Elena followed. Across the marble floor stood Julian Moret, the Armand chairman, French, gay-haired, and suddenly small. He extended a hand. "Miss Carter," he said, forced politeness dripping from each syllable. "A misunderstanding blown out of proportion." Jasmine didn't take his hand. "$5 billion isn't a misunderstanding," she said evenly. "It's a mirror," Julian swallowed. "Surely we can discuss restitution? We're prepared to." Jasmine cut him off. "I didn't come for restitution. I came for accountability." Elena watched, eyes wide. The same floor where humiliation began now felt like a courtroom again. But this time, Jasmine wasn't the defendant. Julian's voice faltered. "What do you want?" It is the world of Jasmine stepped closer. Calm, unblinking. "To erase what you built on people like me," she said, "and replace it with something that remembers what respect looks like." Outside, the cameras flashed through the glass. Inside, the marble seemed to breathe. Justice, once whispered, was now standing in full light. The boutique looked identical to the day of the incident, but the air was different now. It wasn't arrogance floating through the marble halls anymore. It was accountability. Cold, heavy, beautiful. Julian Moret, chairman of Arande Group, stood beside the counter where Vanessa Holt once sneered. Now the same polished marble reflected his nervous posture, his manicured hands trembling as he tried to maintain composure. Cameras flashed through the storefront glass. Every second a new headline appeared online, the store that started the fall. Jasmine Carter returns to the scene. $5B gone. Armand on its knees. Camille Raines positioned herself quietly to the side, her tablet glowing. Behind her, Elena stood half a step back, still wearing the store's uniform, but with a new badge clipped to her chest. Executive Assistant Carter and West Holdings. Jasmine entered with the kind of calm that makes men sweat. No entourage, no press agent, just a woman who carried silence like a weapon. Julian exhaled and began his rehearsed speech. "Miss Carter, the company deeply regrets the behavior of our former employee. We've issued a statement, implemented new diversity protocols, and we're willing to offer." Jasmine raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Don't offer me anything," she said softly. "Offer the people who believed in your brand the truth." Julian blinked. "Excuse me." "The truth," she repeated. "How many times did this happen before the cameras caught it? How many unverified buyers were dismissed for looking like me?" Julian's jaw tensed. "You can't hold me responsible for every bad interaction in awe." Jasmine stepped closer, voice cutting through his defense. "You signed off on the culture that made it possible. You built a system that didn't need to use slurs to be racist. It just needed tone." The words hit harder than any shout could. Camille's tablet chimed. "Ma'am," she said, The live broadcast is active. 8 million viewers across multiple networks. Julian froze. Live? You're broadcasting this? Jasmine nodded. Transparency isn't a threat. It's the cure. For a heartbeat, the whole boutique seemed to hum. Even the air vents sounded like witnesses. Jasmine turned slightly toward the camera, her tone calm but surgical. This isn't about one store manager. It's about a pattern that has existed so long it learned to smile while discriminating. And when confronted, it hides behind words like policy, protocol, or professionalism. But what it really means is prejudice with perfume on it. Elena's throat tightened. Julian wiped sweat from his brow, shifting from foot to foot. "Miss Carter," he said, desperate, "you've made your point. We'll rebrand, retrain, rebuild." Jasmine interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying through the entire room. "You'll dissolve?" Camille's eyes flicked up. "Ma'am, this SP with Al Wong's side is Jasmine didn't look away from Julian. Effective immediately, I'm withdrawing Carter and West Holdings' stake in Aranda Group. Every trademark, every subsidiary, every luxury line tied to your name terminated. The company ceases to exist as of this hour." Julian's knees almost buckled. "You can't. That would destroy a legacy built on exclusion." Jasmine said, "That's the point." The crowd outside gasped as the boutique lights dimmed automatically. Across the world, storefronts bearing the Armand logo flickered offline one by one. Paris, Dubai, Seoul, New York. Within minutes, the brand began disappearing in real time. Elena watched in awe as her tablet displayed the global shutdown sequence. A quiet message appeared on screen. "Asset removal, complete. 6,482 accounts closed." Julian stared at the floor. "You've just erased a century of work." Jasmine's voice softened. "No, I erased a century of arrogance disguised as taste." She stepped back, looking around the room that once denied her entry. "People think justice is noise," she said. "But sometimes it's just a switch being flipped." She turned toward the door. "Elena," she said gently, "lock the register and call maintenance. This place is closed for good." "Yes, ma'am. You want to. They are plast of. They want about the S. Were consider cameras followed." As Jasmine walked out into the light, unhurried, unbothered, unstoppable behind her, the boutique sign flickered once twice and went dark forever in its reflection on the wet pavement. Her face appeared calm. No triumph, just balance restored by midnight. What began as a confrontation in a boutique had become a global reset on every continent. Digital billboards that once displayed Armand campaigns flickered out. A synchronized blackout written in data and consequence. The internet didn't sleep that night. News anchors called it the $5B eraser. Commentators called it financial justice den. But on social media, where stories breathe in real time, the caption under every repost said just one thing. She didn't shout. She just ended them. At 12:07 a.m., Camille's phone vibrated with notifications piling faster than she could swipe. "Miss Carter, CNN wants a live interview at sunrise," she said, walking briskly toward Jasmine's office. Jasmine, seated by the window, didn't turn from the skyline. "Decline," she said. "Let them talk without me for once." Her office, high above the city, was bathed in the quiet gold of distant streetlights. The glass walls reflected a woman who looked untouched by chaos, but inside her mind moved like precision machinery. Camille hesitated. Every outlet is calling this the biggest corporate collapse of the decade. Jasmine nodded slowly. Good. Maybe they'll learn that prejudice costs interest. She rose from her chair and walked toward the panoramic window the same way she had years ago, when Carter and West was just a vision on paper and faith. Down below, camera crews gathered near the closed boutique, now sealed, dark, and guarded by security. Elena stood there too, watching quietly as her old workplace faded into history. Inside the building, Jasmine pressed her fingertips against the glass. The city hummed beneath her. Chaotic, ungrateful, alive. "Do you hear that?" she asked softly. Camille frowned. "Hear what?" "A shoot," the sound of an industry realizing who owned it. Her voice was calm, almost poetic. She turned back to her desk where a stack of old photographs lay, her mother's hands in a hotel apron, her father holding a worn leather briefcase, her younger self standing outside a luxury store that wouldn't let her in. Back then, she'd promised herself that if she ever reached the top, she'd make sure no one had to beg for basic respect. Tonight, she'd kept that promise. Camille's tone softened. "You've done something historic." Jasmine shook her head gently. "History happens when people notice, just as happens when they remember." Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Elena. "They're dismantling the sign." "The last one? Just thought you should know." Jasmine smiled faintly. "Good," she texted back. "It's not destruction, it's correction." Across oceans, reporters stood in front of shuttered Armande stores, one in London said. A single executive decision wiped out a luxury empire overnight. Another in Johannesburg added, and for millions watching, that decision looked a lot like equality finally collecting its debt. Meanwhile, deep inside Armande's Paris headquarters, Julian Moret sat in darkness, surrounded by silence that felt like debt unpaid. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, what should we do? This just was latered in CO. It is they were and are ever." Julian stared at the dimmed company logo. Voice. Nothing. She already did everything. Back in New York, Jasmine's office clock ticked past 1 in the morning. The adrenaline had long faded, replaced by something steadier resolve. Camille gathered her things, pausing by the door. "Should I prepare tomorrow's agenda?" Jasmine shook her head. "No. Let tomorrow breathe." She walked to her desk, turned off the lamp, and stood alone in the half-dark city lights painting her silhouette in gold and shadow. It wasn't victory. She felt it was balance. And balance, she knew, was louder than revenge. Down below, a single photographer caught her reflection in the building's glass facade. A woman framed by the empire she'd built, and the one she just buried. That image would circle the world by dawn. Captioned simply, "Power doesn't scream. It remembers." By sunrise, the city had split in two. Half stood in awe, half in disbelief. But every screen, every feed, every conversation circled the same moment. A black woman calm as glass, dismantling a billion-dollar brand with a single sentence. News anchors repeated her name like a headline turned him. Jasmine Carter. It is a Selliver Wannable distru. Now the footage played on rotation Vanessa's insult, the silence that followed, and the slow, deliberate reveal that had flipped the global power dynamy C on live broadcast. At 6:32 a.m. across Twitter, a new phrase began trending. Number the Carter effect. Thousands were using it. Not just investors, not just corporate voices, but ordinary people. A woman in Logos wrote, "Every job where I was told to tone down, this moment is for us." A teacher in Detroit posted, "She didn't shout, she recalibrated the system." And one line retweeted more than 1 million times simply read, "Power doesn't beg to belong. It decides where belonging starts. It ends with frater." Meanwhile, in a Manhattan studio, a news anchor adjusted her mic. Joining us live is Dr. Renee Caldwell, sociologist and author of The Hidden Price of Politeness. Dr. Caldwell, what are we witnessing here? The expert smiled faintly. We're witnessing the first time corporate racism got a receipt, and that receipt was 5 billion long. Jasmine wasn't watching. She was walking along the Hudson River in running shoes and a hoodie, her phone tucked away. For once, she wasn't CEO, founder, or icon, just a woman trying to breathe between the echoes of what she'd done. Camille caught up to her, out of breath. "You're already a legend. They're calling it the silent revolution. The markets have shifted. Competitors are revising equity policies overnight." Jasmine kept her pace steady. "Good. Let them evolve. Slowly or suddenly, it doesn't matter so long as they move." Camille hesitated. "Are you proud?" Jasmine stopped walking. "Pride's what gets people like Vanessa promoted," she said quietly. "I'm just relieved." Across the river, the morning sun rose behind the skyline, its reflection rippling across the water like gold melting into steel. For Jasmine, it looked like closure. Not peace, not revenge, just a clean page. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elena. "They offered me the manager's position. I said yes, but only if we change the hiring policy. I hope that's okay." Jasmine smiled, typing back. "That's more than okay. That's the point." By midday, talk shows shifted tone from scandal to symbol. Clips of Jasmine's words. You built a system that didn't need slurs to be racist. It just needed tone. We're already being quoted in classrooms, HR workshops, and even parliaments. But in private, some executives still fumed. Behind locked doors, damage control teams drafted apology statements too late to matter. At Armand's now empty headquarters, Chulin Moret signed his resignation letter, the pen trembling between his fingers. Outside, a protest of his former employees gathered not against Jasmine, but for her. They held up signs that read, "We saw, we learned, we change." And miles away, on a park bench by the water, Jasmine sat quietly, scrolling through one final post. A teenage girl in Atlanta holding up a handmade sign that said, "One day I'll own the room that tries to reject me." Jasmine's throat tightened. She didn't cry. She just nodded slowly as if answering across generations. Camille joined her again, holding 2 coffees. "You know," she said, "you could go on every network in the world right now." Jasmine took the cup, looked out at the sunrise, and shook her head. "No, let them talk. Let them write. Let them analyze." A pause. "I already said everything I needed to without raising my voice." And as the wind picked up along the river, Jasmine Carter closed her eyes, letting the sound of water carry the story she'd already finished. A story no one could ever silence again. That evening, Jasmine returned to her penthouse floor-to-ceiling glass, city lights trembling beneath a steady rain. She set her phone face down, leaving the world outside her door for once. No alerts, no headlines, no calls, just stillness. On her kitchen counter lay a bouquet sent from Elena, a small card read for the woman who didn't yell, but was heard everywhere. Jasmine smiled, tired, peaceful, complete. She poured herself tea, sat by the window, and watched the city pulse below. Commerce still humming, ambition still burning. Yet something had changed. It wasn't the world that felt different. It was the way the world now looked at silence. Her reflection met her gaze in the glass. Strong, calm, unapologetic. 5 billion gone, a century erased, and still her dignity was the only thing that mattered. She whispered to no one. Justice isn't loud, it's lasting. Outside, thunder rolled softly through the skyline, not as warning but as applause. Days passed, but the echo didn't fade. Universities began teaching the Carter Protocol in business ethics. Brands rewrote their policies overnight, not out of fear, but recognition. And for once, the phrase corporate accountability carried her shadow behind it. Elena's first day as store director went viral, too. She stood before a new team saying, "We don't sell luxury, we represent respect." The clip reached millions. Some called her brave. Elena called it overdue. Meanwhile, Jasmine avoided interviews, declined awards. She let others tell the story. Employees, students, strangers who finally saw themselves in boardrooms and boutiques. Her silence had become a language, one everyone now understood. Camille entered her office one morning smiling. "They're naming it after you," the same that Jasmine looked up. "What?" "The Scholarship Fund, the Carter Initiative for Young Black Entrepreneurs." Jasmine nodded, eyes soft. "That's the only name worth keeping." Outside, sunlight spilled across her window again. A quiet reminder that sometimes legacy begins right where noise ends. A week later, Jasmine stood once more before the darkened storefront. Its logo gone, its glass covered in paper. The marble still gleamed, but now it reflected something new. Possibility. Passersby slowed, recognizing her face. One young woman whispered, "That's her." Another added, "She didn't just shut them down, she opened something for us." Jasmine smiled faintly, her voice almost a whisper. "They thought power was noise. I proved it could be quiet." She placed one hand on the locked door, not to remember the insult, but to honor the change it sparked. Behind her, the city moved forward, richer, not in money, but in awareness. Camille approached with a small folder. All contracts closed, every cent reallocated to the Carter Initiative. Jasmine nodded. "Then it's done." She turned to walk away, her reflection dissolving in the rain-speck glass. The camera that caught the moment would caption it perfectly hours later. She didn't demand justice. She became it. 7 scubs in, and bid Blong by daughter some passing. And just like that, Jasmine Carter disappeared into the evening, leaving the world louder than it had ever been about silence.